Ever heard of Napoleon Bonaparte? Of course. You have the short, angry guy with his hand in his coat, right? A tyrant who plunged Europe into war for his own glory. That's the story we all know. But what if I told you that's only one side of the coin? What if the real Napoleon was far more complex? A figure whose legacy is still shaping our world today in ways you've never imagined. Stick around, because we're about to peel back the layers of myth and propaganda to find the man behind the legend. Let's start at the beginning. Napoleon wasn't born into French royalty. He was from Corsica, a small island with a culture all its own, and he spoke French with a thick accent his whole life. He was an outsider. He got his big break during the chaos of the French Revolution, a time of incredible upheaval and uncertainty, while others were losing their heads. Quite literally, Napoleon was using his military genius to climb the ranks. His early victories in Italy weren't just about conquering land. They were masterpieces of strategy and speed that generals still study today. He had an incredible ability to inspire his men, to make them believe they were part of something historic. They would follow him anywhere, and they did. By 1799, France was a mess. The government was corrupt and unstable. People were tired of the chaos, so when Napoleon seized power in a coup, many French citizens breathed a sigh of relief. They saw him not as a tyrant, but as a savior who could bring order and stability. And for a while, he did. This is where we get to the part of the story that's often left out of the textbooks. Napoleon the Reformer. One of his most enduring achievements is the Napoleonic Code. Before this, France's legal system was a confusing patchwork of hundreds of different local laws. Imagine trying to do business when the rules change every time you cross a county line. Napoleon changed all that. He created one unified set of civil laws for the entire country. It was revolutionary. For the first time, laws were based on reason and equality, not on class or privilege. It guaranteed religious freedom and property rights. This code was so brilliant and forward-thinking that it was adopted by dozens of countries around the world, and its principles are still the foundation of the legal systems in much of Europe, Latin America, and even parts of the United States, like Louisiana. Think about that. A legal decision you make today could be influenced by a code written over 200 years ago by Napoleon. He didn't stop with the law. Napoleon completely reorganized France. He created a central bank, stabilized the currency, and built new roads, bridges, and canals, boosting the economy. He reformed the education system, creating the lycée system of secondary schools that still exist today, focused on training the nation's future leaders based on merit, not birth. He professionalized the civil service. He signed the Concordat of 1801 with the Pope, healing the rift between the church and the state that had been torn open by the revolution. These weren't the actions of a simple-minded warmonger. They were the calculated moves of a brilliant administrator building a modern nation from the ground up. He was creating a France based on talent and efficiency. Of course, we can't ignore the wars. The Napoleonic Wars were devastating, causing millions of casualties across Europe. Napoleon was ambitious, undeniably. He believed in the superiority of French culture and his system of government, and he wanted to export it by force if necessary. He redrew the map of Europe, placing his relatives on the thrones of conquered nations. This is the image of Napoleon the Tyrant, the man who sacrificed a generation for his own ego. And there's truth to it. His ambition was his ultimate downfall. The disastrous invasion of Russia in 1812, where his grand army was decimated by the brutal winter and Russian resistance, was the beginning of the end. It was a monumental miscalculation born of pure hubris. But, even era. The story is more complicated. Many of the wars were not started by him. The old monarchies of Europe, Austria, Prussia, Russia, and Great Britain were terrified of the ideas coming out of revolutionary France: liberty, equality, and fraternity. They saw Napoleon as the embodiment of this revolution, a dangerous upstart who threatened their ancient right to rule. They repeatedly formed coalitions to crush him and restore the old order in France. So, while Napoleon was certainly an aggressor, he was also constantly fighting to defend the new France he had built against a hostile continent. So, how should we see him? A hero or a villain? A modernizer or a megalomaniac? The truth is, he was all of these things. He was a bundle of contradictions. He championed the ideals of the revolution while crowning himself emperor. He brought legal equality but also reinstated slavery in the French colonies, a terrible stain on his record. He created a meritocracy but also installed his family as puppets in a new European aristocracy. He was a product of his turbulent times, a man of immense talent, boundless energy, and fatal flaws. His legacy is just as complex. He left behind a modern France and a legal code that shaped the world. But he also left a legacy of total war and nationalism that would contribute to even bloodier conflicts in the future. He is a perfect example of how history isn't black and white. Great figures are rarely just good guys or bad guys. They are complex human beings whose actions have consequences that ripple through generations in ways they could never have predicted. To understand Napoleon is to understand the birth of the modern world. It's to see how the ideals of revolution can be twisted by ambition, and how one person's vision can change the course of history, for better and for worse. The little corporal from Corsica was more than just a general, more than an emperor, and certainly more than the simple tyrant he's often made out to be. He was an architect of the modern state, and his shadow looms large over us, even today. Thanks so much for joining me on this deep dive into history. What do you think? Was Napoleon more of a reformer or a tyrant? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you enjoyed unraveling this piece of the past, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more stories that make you rethink what you know. See you next time.